after the Mexican-American War ended in 1850, thousands of northern Anglo settlers poured into South Texas, hoping to lay claim to some of this vast new land. The economic possibilities were endless. Land that many early settlers like Ponciano already claimed title to. Here comes the conflict. These Anglo farmers brought with them three things that made life very difficult for your ancestors. The first was something called barbed wire. The second, lawyers. And the third, a group of people called the Texas Rangers.
Rangers. I knew that. Texas Rangers.
Check them out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And look at these headlines. These are headlines about barbed wire. And here's a photograph of the Texas Rangers. These headlines on the left give us a sense of what barbed wire was doing to the cattle ranching communities of South Texas. Will you please read that phrase out loud?
Con el alambre vino la hambre.
With the wire comes hunger. That was a saying that came out of this era of conflict, this era of great transition between two cultures, really. Mm-hmm. And you see, early Texas landholders never fenced in their land, so cattle roamed pretty freely. But the Anglo ranchers introduced barbed wire, and they built fences around the land, and then claimed whatever parcels they wanted for themselves. And if that didn't work, they had their lawyers figure out a way to take the land through the courts. And if there was any dispute, they had the Texas Rangers there to settle the argument, of course, on their behalf. Mm-hmm. Now, Ponciano was forced to defend his land against these northern ranchers, these intruders, these invaders. In fact, in around 1913, he actually had an altercation with one of the ranch hands at the King Ranch, which, as you may know, is very close to your family's land. In the ensuing fight, Ponciano was stabbed, and he died not long after that. Have you heard this story before?
You know, I've always not that specific story. There's always been animosity between our land and our ranches and the King Ranch. All Mexicans, not just Longorias, but any Mexicans in South Texas, because they just came and moved. If you had a fence line, they moved it. Mm-hmm. And I remember my grandmother telling me stories that, my great-great-grandfather, Ponciano, would put guards at corners of the fencing so that they wouldn't come and move it. And she did tell me there was a conflict. I never knew he was stabbed. Is that how he died?
That's how he died.
And who stabbed him? Somebody from the King Ranch?
Yeah, some Anglo in the land dispute. We don't know his name.
Which is amazing, because I read a book from Dr. Rodolfo Acuna from Cal State Northridge, which is the whole reason I want to get my master's in Chicano Studies, because I read this book called Occupied America. And that was the first time, it's about Chicano history, that was the first time I read about Texas Rangers, how they started. And they're such a respected group now, and obviously have their role now, but in the day that they were just hoodlums.
Right.
They were just these guys hired by people to go rough up people.
Almost like vigilantes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's how it started.
That's right. And they were complicitous with these northern Anglo settlers who were trying to take the land of people like the Longoria family. Mm-hmm. Well, we discovered another grave of a distant relative of yours, and his name was Antonio Longoria. And he was killed in cold blood by the Texas Rangers. His body was buried along the road where it still lies today. Now, were you aware of the tensions between Hispanic and Anglo ranchers and your family's place in that history?
Yeah, that was pretty known back then, and now only because I read about it, and only because, like I said, my family has a very strong sense of our history and continues to pass these stories on. But the stories are in Spanish, and so by the time they get down to us, it's a different story. Mm-hmm. And so
absolutely,
it's nice to know
the
specifics.
Well, these were brave men, the Longorias, trying to make their way in a very, very hostile environment. I asked your aunt Irma to sum up in one word, if she could, the story of the Longorias of South Texas. And the one word she said was survival. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because not only, I mean, with us, it's just so funny, the evolution of a family, but, you know, we're trying to protect our land from the Anglos. And once my grandparents were on the ranch, we were protecting it from Mexicans illegally immigrating north. And so you had to be careful with dangerous people coming up north. And so it's constant. The land is in constant, you know, a fight. You know?
Contested.
Yes.
From the left and the right.
From the left and the right.
The day and the night.
You were hit from every way.
Yeah.
To protect your land, and it was dangerous to be out there by yourself. And
Aunt Irma, I mean, she said survival. It's like bottom line.
yeah, it's a great word.
So now we know that your great-great-grandfather, Ponciano, was a true pioneer. He was a person who did his part to tame the Wild West. He was a person who held on to a large stake of land, several thousand head of cattle, and he raised a family during some very tumultuous times. So in addition to the Davy Crockett's and the Sam Houstons of our history books, I'd like to add Ponciano Longoria to the history books.
Thank you.